I was 3 years from full pension when I found two compliance officers going through my desk drawers. One wore latex gloves. The other was photographing my computer screen. My name's Tom Brennan, 53, 14 years with this company, and I knew exactly who'd set this up. 2 rows over, Austin Caldwell sat at his cubicle, pretending not to watch. I walked closer, still holding my coffee from the deli across the street. "Is there a problem?" The taller officer straightened. "Agent Harding, I'd learn later." "Thomas Brennan?" I nodded. "We're conducting a compliance inspection based on an anonymous report." Anonymous, right. Austin Caldwell, Howard Caldwell's son, 8 months with the company. Wharton, MBA. Thought my job should be his. From day one, he'd treated the office like his kingdom. First time he sat in my client meeting, he interrupted mid-sentence. "Tom, maybe we should try a data-driven approach." I'd been closing that account for 8 years. He'd been here 8 days. He questioned my methods in meetings, dropped his father's name constantly, made it clear he saw people like me as legacy overhead waiting to be cleared out. And me? I was the one thing standing between him and the position he believed was his birthright. I looked back at the officers. "Go ahead, you won't find anything." But my hands trembled slightly. Not from guilt, from knowing exactly how far Austin had been willing to go. The officers kept working in silence, opening folders, checking my desktop. They exchanged glances. That wordless communication that makes everyone nervous. I stayed quiet. Inside, my thoughts raced. This is it. He's finally made his move. Months of whispers, public questioning, fake concern, building to this moment. Austin's eyes kept flicking up, watching, not even trying to hide it. I felt calm, weird but true. Because Austin had no idea what he was walking into. The shorter officer, Ortega, pulled open my bottom drawer. He sifted past notebooks and pens. Then his gloved hand froze. He pulled out a leather-bound folder, flipped it open, and frowned. "Mr. Brennan?" "What's this?" I glanced down. My stomach twisted. It wasn't mine. At least it hadn't been yesterday. Inside were printed emails, handwritten notes, screenshots of supposed mistakes. Mistakes that looked suspiciously like the ones Austin had been whispering about. My throat went dry, but I kept breathing steady. "That's not my file." Harding's eyebrows lifted. "It was in your drawer. And yet, it doesn't belong to me." Behind me, Austin's chair squeaked as he shifted, trying to see. The break room chatter, the ringing phones, the keyboard tapping, all of it faded. Just me, the officers, and the folder that could end my career. But then something shifted. Harding kept flipping through pages, his expression darkening. He showed something to Ortega. They whispered quickly, then glanced at me with an unreadable look. "Mr. Brennan," Ortega said finally, "we need to speak with you in private." I nodded, of course, because if they looked close enough, they'd see the truth. And when they did, Austin's plan would collapse. The officers led me to one of the glass-walled conference rooms. My coworkers' eyes followed, whispering behind hands. I could hear the story spreading. Tom's under investigation. Caught red-handed. Inside, they closed the blinds and placed the folder on the table like evidence in a trial. Harding cleared his throat. "As part of this inspection, we're obligated to review any documents found at your workstation. Can you explain the origin of this file?" I leaned back, forcing calm. "I've never seen that folder before today. It was found in your desk." "I believe you, but that doesn't make it mine." Ortega flipped it open. These appear to be records of errors, policy violations, and misconduct. Dated, initialed with supporting documents. He pulled out a page. An email to a client where you allegedly provided incorrect policy terms. My stomach tightened. I remembered that email. I'd caught the mistake before sending. Rewrote it within 10 minutes. The incorrect version never left my drafts. I looked him straight in the eye. "That's a screenshot of an unsent draft. Not the final email." The two men exchanged a look. For weeks, I'd sensed Austin circling. The remarks about my resistance to innovation. The way he'd hover when I was typing, waiting for me to slip. And now here it was. His big move. A fabricated dossier. Except he'd made one mistake. He thought I didn't know how closely he'd been watching. But I'd been watching him too. The officers walked me through the documents page by page. Screenshots of spreadsheets with errors circled in red. But the corrected versions were still on the shared drive with my digital signature and timestamp. Printouts of emails with typos or wrong dates. But everyone had a follow-up correction, also time-stamped. And handwritten notes, pages of them, describing me as resistant to change, undermining new initiatives, dismissive of junior staff. The handwriting was neat, printed in block letters. "Not mine," I pointed. "Do you have handwriting samples on file?" Harding gave me a measured look. "Why? Because anyone who's worked here knows I use cursive. Catholic school nuns 45 years ago. These notes? Printed. Clean, that's not my writing." He scribbled a note. After nearly an hour, they leaned back. Ortega tapped the folder. Mr. Brennan, do you have any idea who might want to create this documentation about you? I hesitated, just long enough to look reluctant. Then I sighed. I don't want to make accusations without proof. But Austin Caldwell has expressed interest in my position. He also has access to my desk. Everyone does. The drawers don't lock. They didn't respond, but I could tell by their glances that the name wasn't unfamiliar. Back at my cubicle, Austin was waiting. Not looking directly, but I felt his smugness. He was certain he'd won. I sat down, turned on my monitor, acted like nothing happened. Inside, I was thinking 3 steps ahead. Austin had underestimated me. Thought I'd panic, deny, lash out, but I'd been documenting things too. Not fake mistakes, real events, the kind of things people overlook until too late. The officers didn't know it yet, but they were sitting on something much bigger than forged emails. That evening, as I packed up, Austin passed my desk. He stopped, leaned against the partition, whispered so no one else could hear. "Rough day, Tom." I looked up slowly. "Not as rough as yours will be." His smile faltered for half a second. He recovered quickly. "We'll see. People always find out who's really pulling the strings." "Yeah," I said softly. "They do." When I got home, I opened my laptop and reviewed my own records. Over the past year, I'd built an archive, not of mistakes, of conversations, client feedback, performance reviews, notes that painted a very different picture than Austin's version. And tucked among those files was something I hadn't needed until now. Proof of Austin's meddling. 3 weeks earlier, I'd caught him in my inbox. He'd sent a client draft under my name, riddled with errors. But the IT logs had captured his login session. I'd saved the screenshot quietly, just in case. And now, just in case had arrived. I closed my laptop. Tomorrow, the officers would come back with more questions. They always did. And when they asked, I'd be ready. Because Austin thought he was building a case against me. But he'd been writing his own indictment the whole time. The next morning, I arrived early. The office was still quiet. Just the hum of computers and burnt coffee from yesterday. I didn't have long. At 9:12 sharp, the compliance officers returned. They stopped at my cubicle first. "Mr. Brennan, do you have a moment?" Coworkers looked up. Some exchanged glances. Others kept their eyes down. I grabbed my notepad and followed them to the same conference room. This time there was another person inside. Neil Atkins, our regional manager. His jaw was tight, hands folded. He looked like he hadn't slept. Harding began, "Mr. Brennan, thank you for your cooperation yesterday. We've been reviewing the documentation. Some things don't add up. We'd like to clarify a few details." He slid a page across. The email screenshot Austin had planted. "We checked the client records," Ortega said. "As you mentioned, the draft was never sent. The final version was clean. However, this printout came from within the system." "Correct?" "Correct. But it wasn't taken by me." Neil leaned forward. "Do you have proof of that?" I opened my notepad, flipped to where I'd written dates and times, slid it back. IT logs from 3 weeks ago. Someone accessed my account from a workstation that wasn't mine. I flagged it and took screenshots before reporting it to support. The officer studied the page. Neil frowned. "Who?" I didn't answer right away. My pen tapped the table. "You'll see the username in the log." It wasn't mine. I didn't have to say the name. They'd see it soon enough. Back at my desk, the atmosphere had changed. Conversations quieted when I walked past. People avoided eye contact. By noon, I understood why. Lenny Rossi caught me in the hallway. Senior analyst. Worked with me 8 years. "Tom, I need to tell you something." I stiffened. "What?" "Austin's been talking. He's saying you're under investigation for client mishandling. That you've been falsifying records. He says compliance is close to proving it." I closed my eyes briefly. Austin wasn't just relying on the planted folder. He was poisoning the well, creating doubt before the truth could surface. "Do people believe him?" Lenny hesitated. "Some do, you know how he is. He makes it sound convincing." Of course he did. Austin had inherited his father's charisma. That sharp smile. The ability to twist a story into something believable. By afternoon, the freeze was obvious. Short emails, quiet break room. Austin's poison was working, but I reminded myself, perception isn't reality. The officers weren't fools. They had the logs. They had the handwriting samples. It was only a matter of time. Still, that didn't make the waiting any easier. At 3:45, the compliance officers returned. This time, they didn't ask me to leave my desk. They asked Austin. His face went pale. He smiled tightly and followed them into the conference room. The entire office pretended not to watch, but everyone did. Heads tilted, fingers paused above keyboards. Even Neil stood outside his office, arms crossed, watching. Through the blinds, I caught glimpses. Austin gesturing, talking fast. One officer scribbling notes. The other's gaze locked on him. 30 minutes passed. 40. At 50 minutes, the door opened. Austin walked out, eyes red, jaw clenched. He didn't look at anyone as he marched back to his desk. The officers went straight to Neil's office instead. For the rest of the day, Austin barely moved. He typed furiously, but his hands shook. Every so often, he glanced my way, his expression somewhere between anger and panic. And I realized something important. He still thought he could win, thought this was just a setback, that if he pushed harder, whispered louder, he could still convince everyone I was the villain. But the more he tried, the clearer the contrast became. His noise versus my silence. His rumors versus my record. His chaos versus my calm. As I packed my bag that evening, Neil stopped by. He lowered his voice. "Tom, keep doing your job. Don't engage, understood?" I nodded, but inside I knew it wasn't enough to just survive this. Austin had crossed a line. He hadn't just tried to take my job, he'd tried to take my name. My reputation. Everything I'd built in 14 years. And if he thought I was going to let that slide, he didn't know me at all. That night, I sat at my kitchen table with my laptop open. I organized the files I'd saved. IT logs, client testimonials, performance reviews, even casual emails where Austin had overstepped. Piece by piece, the puzzle was forming. I wasn't just defending myself anymore. I was preparing to expose him. The next morning, the calendar invite hit my inbox. Compliance review. Attendance required. Location, conference room B. Attendees, Agents Harding and Ortega, Patricia Donovan from HR, Neil Atkins. Optional, Austin Caldwell. Optional, right. I printed nothing. Brought only a notepad. Walked in exactly on time. The blinds were half closed. The table too clean. Everyone had that stiff posture people get when they've decided not to make small talk. Harding started. "Mr. Brennan, thanks for coming. We've reviewed the documents found at your workstation and compared them to system records." His tone was neutral, but his jaw worked like he was chewing on a problem he didn't like. Patricia Donovan nodded. "Director of Compliance. I'd only seen her twice before, both times in all-hands meetings. We'll walk through key points and then take questions." I folded my hands and waited. Ortega slid a page toward me. First, the email error that appeared in the folder. "Server logs confirm your draft wasn't sent. The sent item in the client thread matches your corrected version." He tapped the margin. "This is fine." He placed a second page on top. "Second access logs. At 5:46 p.m. 3 weeks ago, your account was opened from workstation 4C while you were badged out of the building at 5:28. Neil looked at me. "You were off-site?" "Yes. Check the gym across the street. I go every Monday and Thursday, same time." Harding slid over a printed table. "Security confirmed the badge. We also pulled camera stills from 5:44 to 5:49 p.m. He turned the page so I could see. The grainy frame showed my row of cubicles. A figure in a navy blazer, head down, hands in my drawer. Even in low resolution, the profile was unmistakable. Austin's eyes flicked to the photo and away. "You can't tell who that is." The officer didn't argue. He placed a new sheet on the stack. Third, print server logs. The hard copies in the folder were produced at 6:02 p.m. Same day. Job owner, A. Caldwell. Silence swallowed the room. Even the air vent sounded loud. Austin let out a breathy laugh. "We all print under shared queues." "Anyone could—" "It wasn't a shared queue," Harding said quietly. "It required network login. The job metadata includes the user hash. We verified it with IT." Neil sat back, his face went pale. "Was Howard looped in on this?" Patricia's expression didn't move. "He was copied on the initial anonymous complaint. He has been recused as of this morning. That should have happened at the outset." She didn't look at Austin when she said it. She didn't need to. First time in days I could breathe. I could feel the weight shifting in the room, like a table finally settling on 4 legs. Ortega continued. "We also compared the handwritten notes in the folder to samples from personnel files. They don't match yours. They do, however, match a training form initialed by Mr. Caldwell during onboarding. I was documenting concerns," Austin cut in, voice sharp. "Whistleblowing is encouraged here, right? Or do we punish people for caring about standards?" Patricia folded her hands. "Whistleblowing is protected. Fabrication is not." Austin's jaw twitched. "I didn't fabricate anything." "He's sloppy. Everyone knows it." Neil looked at me, then back at Austin. "We don't know that." I opened my notepad and slid a single color printout toward the officers. "There's one more thing." My voice was calm, steady. 3 weeks ago, there was a client draft sent under my name with multiple errors. I caught it and resubmitted. IT traced the origination to workstation 5B during my lunch hour. I reported it to support but asked them not to escalate unless it became a pattern. Harding scanned the printout, then pulled a second copy from his folder, like he'd already been there. We have this, thank you. Austin gripped the table edge. You can't prove intent. People ask to help all the time. I was helping. Tom leaves things half done. Intent is precisely what we're establishing, Patricia said. We're also establishing process failures, including the lack of early recusal for your father. Austin's head snapped toward her. He did nothing wrong. Patricia didn't blink. That's why it's called a recusal. To protect all parties. Harding pushed the planted folder away like it might spill. Mr. Brennan, do you have anything else you want to add? I thought about all of it. The quiet corrections, the clipped emails, the way conversations died when I walked into the break room. I thought about coworkers who didn't look up, Lenny whispering that Austin made it sound convincing. I want to keep doing my job, I said. I want my name to mean the same thing it meant last month. No one spoke for several seconds. Then Patricia closed her notebook. Here's what happens next. Mr. Brennan, you'll return to your full duties. We'll remove any flags or holds on your accounts. Austin, you are placed on administrative leave with pay effective immediately while we complete our review. You are not to access company systems or premises without HR approval. Austin's mouth fell open. You're suspending me based on a printer log? Based on a fuzzy photo? We're suspending you based on a pattern, Patricia said. The documents, the access logs, the timing, and the conflict of interest concerns. We need to do this properly. Austin turned to Neil. Desperate, say something. Neil looked older. Tired. Compliance is running this. I'm staying out of it. Like I should have from the start. Ortega gathered the papers. He paused, looked up at me. We'll likely ask more questions, but the core issues are clear. As we stood, Harding added, almost gently, for what it's worth, we don't like being used. I stepped into the hallway. Let the hum of the office swallow me. Keyboards, phones, the far-off clatter of the mail cart. Lenny was near the copier. Our eyes met. He didn't say anything, just nodded once, slow, like we were finally standing on the same piece of ground again. At my desk, my monitor woke to the client dashboard. No red banners, no holds. The ordinary grid of names and renewal dates looked almost beautiful. A minute later, security appeared at Austin's cubicle with Patricia. They spoke quietly. Austin handed over his badge and laptop. Movements jerky, like he couldn't quite believe the physics of what was happening. He didn't look at me. He walked out without drama, just a tight line where his mouth should be. The office didn't cheer. No one clapped. That isn't how real life works. People stared at their screens and typed and pretended not to notice what they were noticing. I took a breath and opened the next client file. This wasn't over. Administrative leave wasn't a verdict. Policies take time. Processes have to be followed. But for the first time in weeks, the table felt steady under my hands. And then my phone buzzed. Internal extension. Tom. The voice was firm. Patricia Donovan. I'd like to meet with you privately this afternoon. There's something you should see. It concerns Howard Caldwell. I stared at the receiver, the cursor blinking on my screen. Of course there was more. Send the invite, I said. I'll be there. I walked into the 12th floor conference room at 3 p.m. sharp. The skyline stretched behind the glass, the city buzzing far below. Patricia Donovan sat waiting. She carried herself like someone who didn't need to raise her voice to be heard. Tom, thank you for coming on short notice. Her tone was calm, but the folder in front of her was thick. The door shut behind me with a soft click. Patricia flipped the folder open. We've concluded the initial review of the documents planted in your desk. You should know Austin's actions weren't isolated. They were supported by his father. My stomach dropped. Howard Caldwell. Yes, she slid a paper across. An email thread, heavily redacted, but clear enough. The anonymous complaint had originated from Howard's account. He'd blind copied Austin, coached him on phrasing, even suggested attaching the evidence, so the anonymous report wasn't anonymous at all. Patricia nodded. Exactly. Using the process to settle personal scores, that's an abuse of the system. She paused. Austin remains on administrative leave while HR completes a formal review. Howard has been placed on interim suspension. Compliance will recommend escalation to the board. I exhaled slowly. She leaned forward. Tom, your record is clear. More than clear. Client satisfaction scores, system logs, peer feedback, everything points to consistent professional performance. You are not under investigation. Do you understand? Yes, good. She closed the folder. What do you want moving forward? The question caught me off guard. What did I want? I want my work to speak for itself, I said finally. And I don't want to look over my shoulder anymore. Patricia studied me for a moment, then nodded. Fair. Back at my desk, the office felt different. People weren't avoiding me anymore. Lenny stopped by with a smile that looked like an apology. Daniel from finance dropped off a file and lingered, asking how I was holding up. The tide had shifted. Austin's cubicle was empty, his chair pushed in neatly. Howard's office, the corner one with the view, sat dark. First time in weeks, I allowed myself to breathe. 2 weeks later, the official announcement went out. Effective immediately, Howard Caldwell has stepped down as Vice President of Operations. Austin Caldwell is no longer employed with the company. The email was short, clinical, but the shockwave rippled through every floor. People whispered in break rooms, speculating about what had really happened. I didn't add to the rumors. I didn't need to. The truth was already in the files, in the logs, in the handwriting that wasn't mine. That Friday, Neil called me into his office. He looked older than I remembered, but his voice was steady. "Tom, I owe you an apology. I should have protected you sooner. I should have questioned what was happening instead of letting it play out. I let politics cloud my judgment. I didn't say anything. Sometimes silence is the only honest answer." He cleared his throat. "The board approved my recommendation. Effective Monday, you'll be promoted to Vice President of Client Relations, full control of the portfolio. And we'd like you to help us design the succession plan for when you do decide to retire." I blinked. "You're serious?" He nodded. "You earned it long ago. This company needs people who build trust, not tear it down." That evening, I sat at my kitchen table, the promotion letter in front of me. The city lights shimmered outside my window. I thought about everything. Austin's smug smile, the way he'd leaned against my cubicle with that false confidence. I thought about his father, about the way he'd chosen blood over fairness. And I thought about the compliance officers' faces when the truth surfaced. They hadn't just discovered planted evidence. They'd discovered what envy looks like when it curdles into sabotage. Here's the part no one tells you. Revenge in real life doesn't look like fireworks. It doesn't look like public humiliation or dramatic speeches. It looks like a folder closed quietly on a conference room table. It looks like an empty cubicle on Monday morning. It looks like people realizing slowly who you really were all along. 6 months later, I stood in a conference room by choice. I was training Amanda Reyes, 31, the new account manager. Smart, asked good questions. Reminded me of myself at that age, minus the ego I'd had back then. "Documentation," I told her, tapping the leather portfolio she was copying. "Not because you're paranoid, because it's professional. Paper trail saves careers." She nodded, scribbling notes. Outside, the parking lot was emptier than it used to be. Howard's reserved spot near the entrance. Reassigned. Austin's Audi? Long gone. My truck still sat in the same row it had been in for 14 years. I didn't need the close spot. Never did. That evening, Sarah called from Boston. She got the internship. Morgan Stanley, summer analyst program. She was nervous, excited. "Dad, they asked about my strengths." I said attention to detail and integrity. "I learned that from you." I smiled, first real smile in months. "That's all you need, sweetheart. That and a good filing system." She laughed. I hung up and looked at the empty desk across from me. Austin's old spot, now occupied by a new hire. 24 years old, fresh from grad school. The kid had asked me to coffee last week. Asked for advice, actually listened. Maybe that's the real victory. Not the promotion, not the vindication. It's this, being the kind of man your daughter learns from, and the kind of mentor the next generation seeks out instead of schemes against. I still walk past Austin's old desk every day. It stays empty for now, waiting for a new hire. But for me, it's a reminder. A reminder that no matter how carefully someone plots against you, the truth leaves a trail. Revenge isn't fireworks. It's not even an empty desk. It's going home every night knowing your name still means something. And that's worth more than any corner office. 3 years from now, I'll hit that pension milestone. Full vesting. The finish line I was 3 years away from when this all started. But now I'm not just running out the clock. I'm building something. Training the next generation. Making sure that when I do retire, I leave behind people who understand that competence matters more than connections. That documentation beats desperation. That the long game always wins. Austin thought he could shortcut his way to the top. His father thought he could engineer a dynasty through sabotage. They both learned the same lesson. You can't fake 14 years of work. You can't forge relationships built on trust. And you can't plant evidence against someone who's been documenting the truth all along. Some nights, I wonder where they ended up. Austin working somewhere else, probably still dropping his father's name. Howard explaining to old colleagues why he took early retirement. But mostly I don't think about them at all. Because here's what I learned. The best revenge isn't what you do to them. It's what you build after they're gone. A career that doesn't need defending. A reputation that speaks for itself. A daughter who knows her father fought with integrity, not schemes. And when I finally do retire 3 years from now, I'll walk out of this building with my head high. Not because I won, but because I never had to become what they were to survive what they did. That's the real victory.